The helicopter that made an emergency landing on the roof of a residential building in Bangalore is now being dismantled after the DGCA or the aviation regulator assessed the situation. On Thursday, a trainee pilot of Hindustan Aeronautics Limited made an emergency landing on top of the Maitri apartments in Bangalore. The pilot and the co-pilot were safe. Maya Sharma now joining us on the phone line for more on this. Maya, what's the update? The helicopter being dismantled and lifted?
Very dramatic scenes here. That helicopter being slowly lowered off the roof by the big crane that was brought here. Earlier, of course, part of the helicopter dismantled, the lighter portions of the helicopter being removed. In a very careful operation, a bizarre operation really, this helicopter is now being lowered from the roof of the apartment on which it made an emergency landing yesterday evening. Just behind the helicopter, you can actually see people on their balconies watching it descending slowly, so carefully from the roof, being lowered by that crane. It was lifted on the third attempt by the crane. It has just cleared the roof of the apartment and they are lowering it inch by inch. There are some ropes which are tethered to the ground. There are people on the ground actually holding ropes, trying to bring it down safely and slowly. The helicopter itself did not suffer too much damage yesterday in its descent, and of course, most importantly, the helicopter pilots were safe, the people on the ground were safe. But right now, the very bizarre shots, very bizarre visuals of a helicopter descending to the ground, not on its own steam, but being carefully lowered inch by a crane from that roof, that apartment roof. Crowds have actually gathered to watch what is going on. There are crowds of local residents. There are, of course, a huge media presence as well, watching what is going on. So certainly a huge amount of interest. And what was a bizarre occurrence, a helicopter landing in a busy residential area of the city, being lifted off the roof now and carefully, slowly being lowered to the ground. Of course, this has to be done with extreme care. There should be no more injuries, no more damage. Lucky that it was not a tragedy yesterday. Lucky that those pilots actually got away safely. But this very gentle operation now, the helicopter has now reached the third floor. It was on top of this 5-story apartment building. It has now reached the third floor. It is just outside the third floor balconies. This is not a day the residents of the flat, the residents of this area will forget in a hurry. This tiny helicopter being lowered slowly, carefully by the crane operators, descending to the ground in something which I certainly have not seen before, and I'm sure many people would not have been seen before. This actual trainee helicopter that took off on a trainee sortie yesterday found itself with engine trouble, and the helicopter pilots doing the best that they could, deciding to actually descend on a apartment building, the Maitri apartment building in GM Palya, relatively close to the HL airport from where it took off. But right now, after a whole day of waiting, after GTC officials actually came here and examined the craft, it was decided it could be lowered with the help of a crane. And that's what's happening now. The helicopter has in fact reached the second floor of the apartment. It has reached the second floor of the apartment and is slowly descending. People watching from the balcony, people actually watching the descent of that helicopter. A very slow, a very careful descent indeed. It is now perhaps about 30 feet off the ground, descending slowly to the first floor of that apartment building. People watching with interest. Certainly we've got a great view of this operation, the balcony seat, so to speak. They've got a great view of what's going on. Slight movement now. As the helicopter descends a little further, lots of interested people, lots of crowds actually gathered here, watching the proceedings. People have gathered here to see this very unusual sight indeed, and huge media presence, but lots of people from the area coming, children sitting on walls, people peering over walls to watch this never-before-seen sight in this area of a helicopter being lowered by a crane, gently, very gently, and very slowly to the ground.
Maya, explain to us about, tell us a little more about this residential area. How busy is this entire place? And of course, we can see a lot of excitement there among the residents of that apartment building, people even holding cameras out there.
Absolutely. I think this building has been now the focus of attention since yesterday evening for over 24 hours now. People have turned up here. They've actually come out to watch what is going on. They've actually come to see the process of this helicopter being rescued from the roof. The damage was not major to the helicopter, but what could be removed was actually taken off earlier today so that the helicopter could be as light as possible for this amazing descent. This was actually the third attempt by the crane. They tried to fix it twice before, but there was a problem. But this time it was successful. They have managed to hook that light helicopter onto the crane itself, and inch by inch the descent is being made. It is perhaps above 15 feet above the ground now, still slowly being lowered. There is a truck ready for it. There's actually a truck waiting perhaps to receive it and take this little bird away. A helicopter that made the news, made the national headlines around the country for the sheer bizarreness of the incident, of how bizarre it was that this helicopter actually came down in this residential area. A busy residential area called GM Palya, which is fairly close to the HAL airport. Now that was of course Bangalore's main airport, but now it's being used only for defense flights, only for HAL trainee sorties and other defense flights and for VIP flights, but not commercially in use anymore. Just a few kilometers from here, as the crow flies. That is where that helicopter actually took off from, still hovering a few feet from the ground. The truck actually backing up now to receive the helicopter. People positioning the helicopter carefully with ropes. Somebody on the truck actually reaching out now for that helicopter and moving it as the light fades this evening in Bangalore, moving it carefully onto that truck to be taken away. This is certainly a day the residents will not forget in a hurry. They're taking photographs. The media has actually been camped here. We've been camped here for hours on the rooftop of the neighboring building. People have been up here taking photographs. This is really a very, very interesting sight. That helicopter just a few feet off the ground now, just a little bit above the truck that will actually carry it back to where it belongs. The pilots walked away from this. They walked away. They were medically examined. They walked away without any injury. Nobody hurt on the ground. So a tragedy avoided, but certainly a very curious, bizarre incident that visually it's really amazing to see this. That helicopter now ready for the final positioning on the truck that will take it back to where it belongs. It is an HAL trainee helicopter. The truck actually reversing a little now, getting into position, and still being lowered inch by inch onto the truck that will actually take it to its final destination. And the operation seems to be nearly over now. In the morning, we had DGC officials here figuring out what to do. There's a lot of local police presence as well. They've been here to kind of see to make sure things went on smoothly. We've had fire officials also through the day. No members of the public allowed too close, of course, because things can get a little out of control. But now the helicopter actually being positioned on the truck, and almost ready now to be taken away to the place where it will actually be finally positioned. It's an HAL trainee helicopter. This is an HAL trainee helicopter that actually came down unexpectedly on that apartment building. The media, of course, has been here for a while now, taking shots, watching what has been going on. On the third attempt, the crane finally managed to hook that helicopter onto it, and such a careful, slow operation. They swung it over the roof of the apartment building, and now that helicopter being gradually lowered, safely lowered into the truck. Absolutely bizarre sight here.
Right, Maya, dramatic pictures there of that chopper being brought down from the building. Tell our viewers a little more about the entire incident that took place yesterday and why the pilot had to crash land that helicopter on top of this building. It wasn't actually a crash landing. This was a trainee sortie from the HAL airport. These two pilots were airborne, and around 4:30 p.m. they noticed definitely some engine problem. So they took the decision that they thought was the best at that point, and they brought the helicopter down on the top of an apartment building. There was an open field fairly nearby, but obviously the high tension wires and
they thought this would be the better option, and it was brought down quite safely on this roof of the apartment building opposite to where I'm standing right now. So fortunately, the helicopter pilots could get out, could just walk away without any damage to themselves. Nobody on the ground was injured. Nobody, of course, on the roof at that time. People amazed, really. They heard a loud noise. They saw that helicopter descending, and they all came out to watch. But crowds did gather yesterday. Police were here. The media turned out in full force to really observe this strange thing. Luckily, not a tragedy. Luckily, just a strange, very bizarre incident for the people of this locality, for the people of this building. And now, almost successful, almost over, the helicopter has been removed from the roof. Certain portions were removed early this morning to reduce the weight of the helicopter. The rotor blades were also separated a while ago and lowered carefully off the roof. But this major operation, this lifting of the helicopter, still on, but almost over. They're just trying to figure out how they can position that helicopter on the truck, the flatbed truck that actually has been brought here to JM Palya near Maitri Apartments to take that helicopter away.
Do you have the NDTV Profit app? All the markets, all the news and your own homemade, ready-made portfolio available there for you.
We will right now answer what you should sell, what you should buy when markets are down.
Download at ndtvprofit.com/apps. Get the best app from the channel you trust.